Greetings, everyone, and welcome to the IBME UBU show, where we discuss topics such as leadership development and organizational change management. I'm your host, Antoine Valentin, and today we're joined by our very special guest, Dr. Rachel Guettler. Dr. Guettler holds a Doctor of Education in Organizational Leadership from Pepperdine University, a Master of Music from Cal State University Northridge, a Bachelor of Science in International Relations with a minor in Political Science, and a Bachelor of Arts in Music from Florida State University. She has a certificate in leadership from the Pepperdine Graziadio Business School, and she's a core faculty member in the Consulting Certificate Program in the Graduate School of Education and Psychology at Pepperdine University. Rachel has coached and consulted with individuals, teams, nonprofits, and corporations for over 20 years. Dr. Guettler approaches each student and team holistically, intertwining classical performance techniques with concepts of system theory, value-based leadership, Alexander technique, and emotional intelligence. She teaches empowered vocal performance, public speaking, and coaches on how to build powerful performances and presentations for a multitude of artistic and business settings for a variety of industries. Rachel is a consultant for growing, strengthening, and advancing performance presentation skills. So with that, welcome, Rachel. Rachel, welcome to the show. It's so great to finally get this opportunity to learn more from you. Again, I shared an introduction about you and your work experience and your educational experience, but I'm just wondering, what additional things do you like people know about sort of like who you are, just like out of the gate, outside of those things that, again, anyone can find on LinkedIn?
I think one of the things that may stand out as different and unique is my passion for the arts. I do have a background in classical opera, which I weave into the work that I do through leadership coaching, executive coaching, and beyond.
Yeah, and I'm so glad that you bring that up, because it was definitely one of the things that I wanted to talk to you about. And yes, when I first learned about you was during one of my Pepperdine courses, and I was watching one of your recorded videos, and you started singing, which I thought was fantastic and unique, and definitely helped with engagement on my part and retention of the coursework. So talk to me about that. It's such a rare thing. I was fascinated, and I reached out to you immediately because I wanted to learn more. What got you into opera?
Well, I come from a family of singers, of opera singers. My cousin is a professor at Juilliard. He's been on the Metropolitan Opera stage, the LA Opera stage. His name's William Burden. My aunt has her master's from Florida State, where I got my 2 undergrads in voice, and just started taking classical voice at a very young age at 12, started taking piano at 4. And I think one thing that happened to me in my life that really just changed the trajectory of my life was hearing the Steve Jobs quote about STEM. And he said, STEAM, artist adds STEAM to STEM. And I had a conversation with the then director of the Masters of Science in Management and Leadership program at Graziadio. A couple years ago, she had a need for public speaking coaching for the program. And I said, oh, I teach voice. You could do this and you could do that. And she said, oh, let me get your card. And I thought nothing was going to come of it. And she actually hired me to come in and coach her and then do a pilot test with a small cohort. And I was honored and jumped in. I had a few students who were not traditional voice students for singing. I had a few students at the time that were lawyers that were working on their speaking voice and their confidence in the courtroom. I had one woman who had a very heavy accent and worked for Merrill Lynch and wanted to work on her sales pitch on the phone. And I said, these are some things that you could do that I think would be very helpful. And I started to weave in the many years of coaching experience that I personally had in Alexander technique, breath work, relaxation technique, because really what I started to notice is so many people, whether they're academics or engineers, have a very large amount of people that have gone through coaching with me that are engineers, they don't have confidence. And so I really looked at weaving through things around your presence, your presentation to really build prowess. And it's been incredible to tell people that, yes, I do coach business students using operatic technique. And I also happen to have a doctorate in education with a focus in organizational leadership. And my dissertation focus was on women deans of AACSB accredited business schools in America. And what I thought was so interesting about those women is how many times they talked about being the only woman in the room or the only woman on the faculty at the business school as they grew in their career. And I think one of the things I heard a couple times was fake it till you make it. And I think everybody has those nervous feelings. And I try to take that word out of my vocabulary, as I'm sure you remember me saying that that word nervous doesn't even exist. It's excitement, starting to train the brain to be excited even when we feel those feelings. And that's really acting coaching. That's really Alexander technique and acting technique, where you try to get over the butterflies in the stomach and use that energy to have a more exciting presentation. And so, to go back to your original question around, how did I get into this? Family of musicians, family of really incredible musicians who have continued to inspire me year over year with what they do in their voices, and started to try to weave that into my career in higher education.
Yeah, so that's very interesting. It sounds like, again, it was just in your DNA with so many members of your family that were already in music. And you said you were playing piano at the age of 4. So it's obviously something you wanted to do, because I know there's some people that are sort of forced into things like piano and then they don't enjoy it. And it can be a very painful process to learn. And then you were able to sort of parlay that, so to speak, I guess, and weave that into, again, your personal career growth, as well as what you're doing as far as consulting as well as teaching. Is that right?
Yeah, so I helped to, as a founding member of the consulting certificate program at the Graduate School of Education and Psychology at Pepperdine. We have a great consulting certificate program. It's a micro learning program. So I've been teaching in that and have been doing consulting for individuals and also businesses. Some people that have had their own individual coaching with me then say, hey, I want you to come back to my company. And that's been really incredible. And usually that's around helping people prepare to speak to, let's say, donors or their board, things like that, and really helping them kind of polish. Most people, I think, they know their work, but they often get outside of themselves. They're so in their heads that they're not thinking about the body as an instrument. I do play piano, but I also play a lot of other weird instruments like the didgeridoo, the harmonium. I have a couple guitars, been playing guitar, not well, but it's always a fun, socially acceptable instrument to kind of whip out and play. And I think one of the things that's really fun about instruments and music in general is exploration. And in America, we kind of have a little bit more of an American Idol society where we're going to have a competition and everyone's going to sit and you're going to perform and you're going to be judged and there's going to be a winner. There's somebody better than you out there. And in other cultures, it is much more like coming together after dinner and playing cards. Everybody, whether you can sing or not, you pick up a spoon and you're beating on the table and you're playing and you're exploring. And it's a great way of building community and acceptance. And, I have a degree, an undergrad degree and a master's degree in music, but I also have another degree in international relations. And that has really exposed me to a lot of different cultures. Along with music, you have to study a lot of Romance languages. And what I started to do was say, hey, if I can say this word in French, Italian, German, Spanish, I also want to say it in Farsi, in Arabic, in Vietnamese, in Portuguese. And I started to just notice how that can really break barriers, learning people's language and how powerful language is. And also language is dying, unique languages. There's so many languages that are becoming obsolete. And some of my scholarly work has been on different languages, and every person has a mother tongue, the language that their mother spoke while they were in the womb. And I'm a mother of 2. And I think that is something that is so impactful in our life journey, the language that we're exposed to and how we can use language. Something also that's very interesting right now is how language is changing. So many people, young people, text message. They hang out with their friends in a video game. They communicate via email. They have a very hard time having a conversation. And so when they are put on the spotlight to present material or have a conversation, it's clunky.
Mhm.
And I think that people really need to develop language more, use language more, and get more comfortable in the medium of vocal communication.
Mm. I'm curious, you've been at Pepperdine for about 10 years now, and I want to talk about Pepperdine specifically in a minute, but I also know you mentioned Florida State,
Mhm.
obviously the Seminoles, a very famous football team. How did you end up at Florida State?
Yeah, so my aunt got her master's at Florida State, and our family knew the opera director there. I had actually sent my deposit to a different school. And I went down, this is pre-Uber. I took a plane down and then took a cab for my audition, and I saw the palm trees and the Spanish moss, and I was smitten. And I ended up thinking, halfway through my degree program that I wanted something else beyond music. And so I started to look at other degrees that utilize the foreign language coursework. That's what brought me to international affairs with a minor in political science. And then immediately after graduation, I moved to Los Angeles. I've been out here since 2005. I got my master's at Cal State Northridge, go Matadors. And at the time when I was getting my master's, I was working at a performing arts college in admission work. And this is where I really started to see, young people who wanted to make a career out of performance. Some of them did, some of them did not. And I think that was really impactful for me to look at how can I utilize this performance art world and the exposure that I've had and look at other ways to make an impact. And so being at Pepperdine has been incredible. I came to Pepperdine, yes, 10 years ago and started working at the business school. And a lot of people said to me at the time, wait, you're leaving performing arts? And I said, well, I'm in Los Angeles and music is a business and performing arts is a business. And I'm going to learn from the incredible people at the business school. And I got to work with our MBA program, full-time, part-time, executive MBA, our helped to launch the Doctorate of Business Administration program, our Masters of Science in Organization Development program, and also the Masters of Science in Management and Leadership. We also have a bachelor's completion program for people who maybe didn't finish their undergrad, come back and get a bachelor's in management, and then go on and get an MBA, which exposed me to so many incredible people from all different walks of life. And through the MSML work, I have worked with students from all over the globe. We used to be in person. Now that program's completely online, but I remember working with a student group that was 80% from Saudi Arabia,
Mhm.
one woman in full hijab, and working with her about being more powerful with her voice. And it was incredible. It was incredible to see people kind of step out of their comfort zone and try something new with their voice to have more of an impact. And I'll just add, in the last 2 years, I've been working in a new role with Pepperdine in university advancement. So helping to further the mission of the university through philanthropic partnership with individuals, corporations, and foundations.
Mm. That's a very worthy cause. Um, I'm thinking about some of the things you said earlier about the communication as an art form and how with some of the younger generation that's grown up with electronic texting and emojis and things of this nature. Um, I'm just wondering, you know, um, how do you see, this potentially sort of evolving if you're looking onto the future as far as some of the younger generation starts to get into the workforce, and do you feel that they'll have the skills necessary in order to be successful?
The workforce is highly complex. We have 5 generations in the workforce today, and COVID didn't really help that. A lot of people want to work remotely. You can go on a date online, you can get your groceries delivered online, you can have a social connection with people and never leave your couch. And I think because of that, people are yearning for human connection. And one way to have human connection is through art form. But I think one of the industries that was definitely hit during COVID was performance art. A lot of theaters had to close, along with restaurants, where people come together and break bread. We definitely saw a big hit there in that industry where people weren't going out to eat anymore. They were afraid to go out to eat. Something I've also seen with our Lisa Smith Wengler Center for the Arts here at Pepperdine, we have an older community that loves to support the arts, and yet they're the ones with more compromised immunity that are more afraid to come out, even though we kind of here in America feel like COVID's over. Some people do not. Some people do not feel comfortable being in large group settings, and yet it's so fulfilling. And so with your question about young people coming into the workforce, it's something that's being lost. Young people get laptops at a very early age. I know in my own neighborhood, on my little cul-de-sac, my daughter's one of the only people without a smartphone, and she's 7. And I joke with her, she wants an iPad. I said, the closest thing you're going to get to an iPad is a patch we're going to put over your eye, kid. Because I don't want her on a screen. She does get to use my phone occasionally. We'll look at pictures together, and I've let her, she knows how to access a book on tape. She likes listening to stories on tape, things like that. But I really struggle with how many young kids are not able to come over to the house. We have a campfire out front. We'll have a campfire and we'll play music out there, and people just in the neighborhood are attracted to it. And I'll say to these kids, hey, you're welcome to be on your phone back at home, but if you're in our yard, you need to put that phone away. And they're, well, my mom says, go hang out with your mom. You want to be over here, you're going to roast some marshmallows, you're going to talk, and I want to know about your day. And they very quickly do put the phone away. And I think it's going to be the responsibility of the generations above that have seen the impact of the good of technology and the harm of technology to put limits and encourage people, not just a limit without a reason. Use your communication to say why it's healthy for you to put that phone down and have a conversation. And even when you think about the body as an instrument, we see people on their phones, and it's creating this punch where they can't even hold themselves up, and they're 17 years old. They're so used to being hunched over a laptop, hunched over a phone. We also see this even in the freedom of driving. I remember as a young person, the day I turned 16, I was in the DMV getting my driver's license, and this younger generation has no desire to drive. And I think a lot of that has to do with fear. They're afraid, but also just comfort. I can just use Uber. I'm just gonna have mom drive me everywhere. And I think it's one of those things where we as an older generation need to encourage young people. And sometimes it's hard because then we have to let go. We have to say, you could get hurt out there, yes, but I want to encourage you to put down the phone, have a conversation, look people in the eye, be bold, be willing to maybe just drive around the neighborhood, drive around town, get comfortable using things beyond a device.
Yeah. I can relate. My oldest son is about to turn 16, and just like you, when I was that age, I couldn't wait to get my driver's license, so I could be independent, drive myself around. And like you said, my older son seems to have no interest or motivation to get his license. But I think it's like you said earlier, it all starts in the home, and what's the message that we instill as far as the values and the importance of real human connection. Obviously, technology has helped in so many wonderful ways, and in some ways brought us together. We can communicate with people on the other side of the globe at any time, but at the same time, it's also made us almost disconnect and drawn us away from even the people sitting right next to us. So there is a beauty to that human connection that's a lot easier to establish when you don't have those distractions of those devices. And then again, when we talk about not just in personal, but in the workplace, talk to me about some of the work you're doing again in your consulting with organizational development. And are you seeing any themes evolve because of technology that maybe you're helping individuals and organizations address, or maybe that you didn't see early on?
Yeah, I think one of the things that technology has helped with is the globalized workforce. So not only do we have a diverse workforce in many different areas from age, ethnicity, but you might have teams that are in different time zones, in different countries, speak different languages as their mother tongue. And something I found through the consulting certificate program work that we do is a lot of people are really interested in being their own boss. They have worked for a business. They've gotten inspired. They've figured out what they want to do. They have gone to get terminal degrees and then some, and they've decided, how can I run my own business and be anywhere in the world and work with people? And usually that's through a medium like this, like Zoom or Google Meet or something like that, where they can do consulting work. And then I think one of the cherry on top for those types of experiences, and when you do get to meet somebody in person, where you move beyond just seeing people from the waist up. You get to go to something and meet them in person, or go to their place of business. And I think that is something that's really interesting. It's something I talk about in the coursework that we explored, the difference between how would you prepare for a presentation if you weren't on Zoom, if you weren't able to maybe have your notes in the corner of the screen to help you move along, if you had to look people in the eye, if you had to stop looking at yourself on the screen and actually look at people in the eye and try to move them with your energy and your words. And that's really what I've tried to do through the work that I do in the consulting certificate program, is help people with their personal branding, but also with the way that they use that brand to get more work. You're not the kind of consultant that comes in to get one gig. You want to be the person that gets gig after gig after gig, or contract after contract after contract. And, even in the coursework that we did together in the MSML program at Pepperdine, you think of it as an assignment, but if you're one of those smart students, like I know you were, Antoine, you think of it as an opportunity to network with others, to be exposed to other industries that you might not already know. And dare I say, even think of it as an interview. Think of it as the presentation that you're doing for the CEO or the CFO that may lead them to come back to you and say, I'd love to sit down with you and talk to you about a job opportunity. And so I think what I hope people get from their interactions with me is ways to deepen their impact and present themselves better, but also think of every opportunity as a way to share their personal brand, share their light, and shine more brightly on others.
Indeed. And when you mentioned personal brand, I can't help but think about two things. I think education, universities specifically, seems to be come into question lately. People are saying, because of the availability of information on the internet for free at any time, are college degrees worth it anymore? And then at the same time, I hear about sort of the influencer economy, and young kids are surveyed and what they want to be when they grow up as a YouTube influencer. So I'm just curious, what's your thoughts, again, on the importance of continued education through the more sort of traditional university sort of path versus, hey, I can educate myself on the internet and therefore I can do anything I want, including just be a YouTube influencer or something else, perhaps?
That's a great question, and I think it's so timely and poignant. One of the things that I think that is so great about the higher education experience is that human connection piece. Yes, you can get a degree online, and maybe someone that works well for them with their schedule. But when those online learners have the opportunity to maybe go to a dinner and meet their cohort in person, everything changes. And I think, many college institutions are struggling right now because they're confused about their identity. And that's one of the things that's kept me at Pepperdine really true to our values, our purpose, our mission to strengthen lives for service, purpose, and leadership. I can always tell when I work with a student who has done their undergrad degree at Pepperdine, or is in the middle of their undergrad degree program and they're interning with us or doing something like that. They have just a different work ethic. They approach their work holistically, not just the mind, not even just the mind and the body, but the mind, body, and soul, the whole person. No matter what your faith may be or may not be, we are spiritual beings. And if you can look at life as how are you breathing into the eternal, breathing into echoes upon echoes. I mean, you think about, for example, artists, famous artists that died as paupers, but now we celebrate their art hundreds of years later. Think about that, how your life echoes into eternity.
Mhm.
And I love adult learners, people that really enjoy lifelong learning. There's a lot of research around beginner's mind, coming back and learning a new language. I know my father right now is trying to learn Spanish.
Mhm.
And I have a good friend who's in his 80s and he plays the bass flute and he's an Aikido instructor and was a Kern River guide. And I mean, all these different things where he is a big believer in beginner's mind, going back and saying, I want to learn to play a new instrument. I want to learn a new language. I want to get a micro learning experience, come and get a certificate program, or I want to go back in my 60s and get a master's degree. What I found with my doctoral program, especially at Pepperdine, was I started in what was the traditional format where I went to class on Thursday night. And with that program, it was mostly Los Angelenos, a lot of people that worked in education, higher education. And I have some friends from that experience that they're going to be close to me for life. I mean, we went through life together. We traveled abroad together. We traveled to DC together. We got published together. Then the pandemic happened. I also had at that time just switched to what they call the GAP Access, Global Access Program, where you do a couple of learning intensives in person so people get to see each other. And then you do a lot of online learning. I had a student in my cohort from Wuhan, China in 2020. I mean,
Oh,
that was incredible.
right.
We had just had an in-person and then, everybody went their separate ways. And we met online and it was so incredible to know her and know, okay, you're in Wuhan, China. I'm here in the Los Angeles area. I've got colleagues in South Carolina, in Birmingham, Alabama, in Michigan, in Nigeria, and really being able to learn from these people all over the world, but also having this connection with them. Now, let's say, when COVID hit, we couldn't do those intensives in person, but we would have to, as you know, do some group work together.
Right.
So you got the class where you're getting the information, but then you have to like lean on each other. You're texting each other like, hey, where's your part? What have you gotten? And somebody comes in with some incredible design abilities, and somebody comes in with an incredible ability to present well, and somebody comes in with a connection to the company that you might be featuring and they have some inside scoop, and you all start to feed on each other's energy. I think that is what makes life so rewarding, is getting to know people. Yeah, you can spend the rest of your life watching Netflix and getting your food delivered on Instacart, but I wonder on your dying day if you'll feel fulfilled. I
Yeah.
think that for me, in my own personal educational journey, my husband keeps telling me, stop it, but like I want to now do the Master's in Dispute Resolution program at the law school. It's one of the best programs in the nation for dispute resolution. Some of the coursework that I did in my doctorate of education goes into that program. And I'm like, I just can't help myself. I love learning. And there's research around keeping your mind active will help you have less brain decline in your
Yes.
80s and 90s. So I joke, well, it's for my longevity.
Right. Yeah, and totally agree with you there. Having a purpose, and if that purpose is the commitment to lifelong learning, definitely keeps us vibrant and growing. And certainly, I was one of those people deciding to go get my master's at the age of 50. And I can say through my personal experience at Pepperdine, it was wonderful. And you're right, although most of it was virtual, I did long for and enjoyed the opportunities to meet in person and strengthen sort of those relationships that had begun virtually. So a couple of last questions before we run out of time. I'm just curious, again, so there's people like you and I, again, that have committed ourselves to learning and growing. And again, you'll usually find those at Pepperdine. They're coming to Pepperdine looking for something. But in your consulting work, again, I'm assuming people have reached out to you, maybe organizational leaders, but have you encountered members of their team, perhaps, or maybe were resistant or hesitant to sort of want to embrace some of the sort of strategies or ideas that you were suggesting to help implement, bring them together? And if so, how have you dealt with those in the past? Getting somebody to the point where they're open to change or to learn.
I think one of the things that's been really fun for me is to watch people digest the idea of operatic technique and how this is going to help them with their presentation to the board. No, you won't be singing this presentation. And I think there are a lot of people that say to me, oh, I can't sing. Oh, I have a small voice. And I'm not asking you to sing. I'm asking you to develop your voice in a way that you have confidence. And I think some of it is really changing the mindset, helping people see that this is to not help them be like others. Your voice is as unique as your thumbprint or your DNA. Your voice is like no one else. There, you may have similarities. You may be in the same vocal register. You may be able to sing similar songs. You may sound similar, but your voice is as unique as your DNA, and really helping people to love themselves. And I think that comes back to that values-based leadership piece, self-reflection, getting comfortable with your body, filming yourself and watching, how do I present? Am I rocking back and forth? People, oh, I got it. I don't need your help. And then they watch themselves and they're like, oh, you're right. I am rocking the entire time, or I'm doing this the entire time, or I'm standing there like this, with my hands clasped together the entire time. I look like a chicken wing flying around with my arm doing the same thing over and over, getting them aware of their body. And then there's the emotional intelligence piece where I say to them, if you want to lead others, you first have to look at the self. You first have to get into the self and see, how can you strengthen yourself and even master the areas that you feel are weak, and get comfortable in your weaknesses enough that you can then lead others to explore their weaknesses or explore the weaknesses within the company. Look at, how can we fill this gap? How can we have uncomfortable conversations? How can we create change? Change is never comfortable. And how can we do that in such a way that it feels good? First, we have to be comfortable in ourselves to deliver those ideas and invite others to follow, invite others into the conversation. And that has been, I think, eye-opening for people when they're like, wait, what are we doing? Who is this lady? And then saying, oh, it's about a mindset shift. We're going to use tools and techniques that are going to help you in the financial industry, that are going to help you in the nonprofit industry. Hopefully that answers your question.
It most certainly did. And for what it's worth, you brought back a funny memory that I'll share with you regarding the voice and singing voice specifically. So I grew up in Brooklyn. I went to a Catholic school, and it was a requirement that the boys and the girls sang in the choir, the church choir. And I was one of the few people that was excluded from that requirement because my voice was so awful. So instead, I ended up being an altar boy. And luckily for me, despite not having a singing voice, I was a ham, and I did want the spotlight and enjoyed being on stage. And I jumped at any opportunity to speak in public. And I think it's definitely something that served me well. So whether you do, I guess, through singing or any other path, I think if you get to a place where, again, you're comfortable speaking, to obviously, first of all, one-on-one, but also if you can extend that to small or even large groups, it just makes us all the more better at sort of communicating, and I think more successful and happy, I think, in life.
Yeah, I'd love to comment on that. I know if I listen back to recordings of me when I was 17, 18, I was nowhere in the vocal shape that I am now. I often remind people that the voice is a muscle. It's a small muscle, but it is a muscle that can be trained. Now, if I were to go out onto the basketball court and try to play basketball with some of the greats, I wouldn't be very good. But if I went daily and practiced daily, I could get better.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of times people do have an experience in their youth where they were told something, whether it's you're ugly, you're not good enough, your voice isn't, maybe it's a vocal thing, you're not able to play basketball, you can't run fast, whatever it is. And they accept that agreement.
Yeah.
They say, I'm gonna believe that. They then, for the rest of their life, will never explore those things fully. And I think one of the things that I talk a lot about it sometimes with a voice, it could be your musical theory ability to keep a beat, ability to read music, follow a pitch. Those things may or may not be fixable. But the more that you expose yourself and work at it, you could. I think one of the things that I really try to get people to do again is that thinking of the body as an instrument, the place that we resonate. Maybe you don't have as a wide of range as the person next to you vocally, but everybody can sing. If you have a voice, you can sing. And what it really boils down to is learning how to do it well. And that comes down to technique. Everybody can speak. Those that can speak in an influential way and move others with their ideas. Now that's a differentiator. Everybody can do a PowerPoint, but how many people can really deliver a PowerPoint in a powerful way and affect change with that and get people to gravitate towards their ideas? So I think, again, it comes down to that knowing the self and challenging the self in such a way that you're polishing and trying to make things better.
Spot on, Rachel, and the perfect place to pause. Again, I know you're super busy and I appreciate you carving out some time to meet with me. I've really been looking forward to this and I thoroughly enjoy the conversation. And I look forward to sharing this with everyone via YouTube so others can learn from everything that you have to say.
Thank you, Antoine. It was such a pleasure and an honor, and I look forward to learning more from you. I've enjoyed all your videos and the great work that you're doing in the world. Thank you.
Thank you, Rachel.